Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're in the second class of our restart of the group learning program. This is where I'm going to really start sharing teachings with you guys, where last week I did share some teachings with you guys, but it was more of an introduction to the path to enlightenment and the teachings of the Buddha, as well as understanding the group learning program. But now I'm going to actually start sharing with you the teachings of the Buddha to help you understand the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. This is where you're going to learn about right view and right intention. These are the first two steps on the Eightfold Path. Over the next 3 Sundays, I'm going to be sharing teachings with you about the Eightfold Path, breaking this down into 3 individual sections. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha, with everything else plugging into it. So here, over the next 3 weeks, you're going to get a really good overview, but really good in-depth understanding of the Eightfold Path. And this is the path to enlightenment. If you're interested in getting to enlightenment, where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, no longer experiencing any discontent feelings, where all the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all of this is eliminated from the mind, you're going to need to know the Eightfold Path. By the time you train your mind, you're going to be experiencing the focus, concentration, clarity of mind, and deep memory. You'll see your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease. You're not being bitter and harsh and hostile and argumentative anymore. You get to the point where you don't even have a bad mood anymore. And it's this Eightfold Path that's going to help you to do that. Today's class, you're going to be learning the Four Noble Truths, as well as some other teachings as well. But the Four Noble Truths is the very first teaching of the Buddha, where you can have this breakthrough in understanding the problem in the unenlightened mind, the cause of it, the elimination of it, and the path forward. In these 4 simple statements that you will be able to independently verify, you can have this breakthrough to understanding why your mind experiences anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings. As you understand what is causing these discontent feelings, then you can actually eliminate them. If you didn't know what was causing them, you wouldn't be able to eliminate them. So welcome to all of you guys, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. Nice to see all of you guys here. I'm going to start our class with a meditation the way that I do with each individual class. We're going to start with some chanting to ease into the meditation. This is just to help ease the mind into meditation and focus the mind. This isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship or any kind of prayer or anything like that. I'm going to be teaching the chanting as part of the group learning program when we get to that portion about maybe 8 weeks from now. I'm going to be starting a 4-part series on Buddhist chanting, and you're welcome to learn that on the Wednesdays. And if you can't attend live, you can watch the recordings. So I'm going to ease us into meditation with the chanting, and then I'm going to come in with some guidance to help guide you in the meditation. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start class and helping you to understand the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. So if you'd like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, there is a walking position too, but it doesn't usually work out so well with online learning. But seated, lying, and standing work out really well. So I did a session on Wednesday that guided you on the meditation. So if you haven't seen that, I taught about the position for meditation and all the details of meditation. You can watch the recording if you haven't seen it yet. But today I'm just going to do meditation with you guys. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Potang Mahakawanhang Apiwateyami Savakato emakewata dhammo dhammang namasami Supatipano emakewatu sawaka sangko sanghang namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti pisu emahagawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammono Sakatoro Kawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusranang Bhuto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you'd like to just establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in naturally through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะเกวาโหตังมะเกวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. Welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to our class today. We're going to be studying the Eightfold Path. We're going to be studying the wisdom section, which is right view and right intention. I'm going to be using the words of the Buddha here to be able to help you guys understand what he actually taught. But remember, as you're learning, it's important that you don't believe any of the teachings, as I shared in our previous class, that you would like to be able to learn the teachings, investigate them, and examine them. You would like to reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then you would like to practice them in order to be able to integrate them into your day-to-day life and train your mind. That's where the real results are going to be experienced. I'm going to show you how to do this learning, reflecting, and practicing as we go in our class today. I'm going to make sure that I teach it to you in this way so that you can see how to do this with this very important teaching. And then you're going to need to do this with all the other teachings on the path to enlightenment as well. As we go, if you guys would like to ask any questions, you're welcome to by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. You can put that into the comment section and I'll be able to see that and answer your question for you. If you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like by unmuting your microphone. So first, as I mentioned, I'm going to be sharing with you this 3-part series over the next 3 Sundays. Today and then 2 more Sundays, I'm going to be sharing with you the wisdom section, the moral conduct section, and the mental discipline section. Today, we're going to be studying the wisdom section, right view and right intention. But ultimately, you're going to be learning all the entire path. Each individual factor, I'm going to teach it to you in a way that you can learn it intellectually, reflect on it to independently verify it, and practice it. And today we're just going to be doing right view and right intention so we can really dive into it in detail. But I'm going to be teaching all of these over the coming weeks. You can see the schedule here that on the 3rd of November, we're going to be studying the moral conduct section of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And then on the 10th of November, we'll be studying the mental discipline section, which is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So in a matter of just a couple of weeks, you're going to be able to get really in depth with the teachings of the Buddha. And then from there, we're going to be learning some other things. And then ultimately, we're going to start from chapter 1 of the book, Developing a Life Practice, the Path That Leads to Enlightenment. So you've got some time to be able to download this or take it and go print it, maybe get a printed version on Amazon, or you can get a printed version here at the temple by just reimbursing us for the printing cost. So you'll be able to pick that up. Today, we're going to be essentially studying chapter 4 and a little bit of chapter 5. And then the subsequent weeks that we're doing the Eightfold Path, we'll be studying the rest of chapter 5. But there is going to become a point where we start at chapter 1 and we go through chapter by chapter by chapter. But these first 4 or 5 weeks is kind of like a really nice overview and getting in depth with the teachings of the Buddha, so that then we can actually start from the very beginning of the book. So here's the words of the Buddha on right view. This is from the Eightfold Path, that core central teaching of the Buddha that everything else plugs into. He says, "In what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view." Essentially what he's doing here is he's pointing to another teaching. He's pointing to the Four Noble Truths, because as I mentioned, the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that other teachings plug into. So he's not explaining the whole Four Noble Truths here. He's just actually pointing to it and saying that is right view. And then underneath of this line here, what I've done is I've put the top section of the Four Noble Truths. There's more below this. What I'm doing here is I'm just helping you to build confidence that what the Buddha is talking about in the Eightfold Path as right view is the Four Noble Truths. So you can see that correlation and that connection. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths so that you can understand what is the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. Again, this is where you can have a breakthrough to understanding what's causing these discontent feelings. But in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you're going to need to first understand the Three Universal Truths. These are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha know that they were true, I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true, but it's important that you know that they're true. And that's why you're interested in listening to the teachings of the Buddha with eager ears, so that you can listen and understand each individual aspect of his teachings, learning it intellectually first. So let me show you how this works. I will help you to learn the first universal truth of impermanence intellectually first, and then we'll move it through these other phases. So what the universal truth of impermanence is explaining to you is that everything is constantly changing. There isn't this fixed state. In the world around you, when you look around, anything you see, anything you hear, anything you smell, anything you taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, these are all impermanent. These are what's called conditioned objects. Conditioned objects arise, they change, and they fade away. They are impermanent. They are not permanent. There are things called unconditioned objects. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. Enlightenment is that this enlightened mental state, it's an unconditioned mental state, that it doesn't arise or change or fade away. The mind is actually permanently enlightened. And the same thing with the natural laws that the Buddha taught, that the natural laws of existence that he described 2,500 years ago, they don't change, they're unconditioned. This is why his teachings are just as applicable today as they were 2,500 years ago, because he's explaining these natural laws, and this is the wisdom that you need to awaken to. Because he explained the way the world is, he didn't explain the way the world should be. So he's explaining the way the world is with the universal truth of impermanence, so that you can understand this, to be able to understand why your mind experiences all these struggles and difficulties in day-to-day life. So the world around you is impermanent, that things are constantly changing. Things arise, change, and fade away. Now, with this intellectual learning, what you would like to do is now move this into reflection, where you start reflecting on this to determine whether it's true or it's false. And the way that I suggest you do this is start with things that you're familiar with. Start looking around the world to see if you can find something that's permanent. Because if you can find something that you can see, hear, smell, taste, comes in contact with the body, or goes through the mind, If it's permanent, then you've disproven this and it's not an actual universal truth. So if you start with this physical body, which you're really familiar with, you can ask yourself, is it permanent or impermanent? If it's permanent, that means it's always stayed the same, that it's never changed. If it's impermanent, that means that it's constantly changing. So ask yourself, is this body permanent or is it impermanent? Right? So normally what students are saying is that it's impermanent. They can see that it's been constantly changing ever since conception. When the egg and the sperm came together, this body's been constantly changing. We get teeth and then they fall out. We get new teeth and then they get cavities. Our hair grows long. We cut it and it's short and then it grows again. Our fingernails are constantly growing. We get wrinkles and moles and pimples and all these different things. The body's constantly changing. Ask yourself about your relationships. Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? If they're permanent, you've had exactly the same people in your life your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, that means people have been coming and going in and out of your life your entire life. So ask yourself, are your relationships permanent or impermanent? Of course, they're impermanent. Then ask yourself about your bank account. Is your bank account permanent or is it impermanent? If it's permanent, it's the same balance all the time. If it's impermanent, it's going up and down, or maybe it's going up, 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 or down, 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 right? This is all impermanence. Look at the weather. Is the weather permanent or impermanent? Of course, the weather is impermanent. So you can look around the world around you. Wherever you are right now, you can look around and you can see that everything around you is impermanent. It's not permanent. So this is a universal truth. And now you can know that as wisdom to be able to help you with the Four Noble Truths. If you don't know this yet and you haven't deeply soaked this into the mind, you might need to go around the world to be able to soak this into the mind. That when you're walking down the sidewalk and you see a crack, that is impermanence. When you look at the tree and it has green leaves and then there's brown leaves on the ground, this is impermanence. Or maybe where you live, there's no leaves in the tree right now, but later on there will be. This is impermanence, right? You can see this constant change around you. If you're looking at a fence and you see that the paint is fading, this is impermanence. So this is going to help you to understand the Four Noble Truths when we get to it. This second universal truth is the universal truth of discontentedness. I'm going to explain to you what this is and help you to understand it, but to understand that if you've studied teachings in other places, people might be using the word suffering. I don't use this word because it doesn't actually accurately describe what the Buddha is teaching you here. What he's teaching you is he's describing about the unenlightened mind and what the unenlightened mind experiences. It experiences these conditioned feelings. And I describe this as discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. But some people use the word suffering here, so I'll circle back and explain to you why I don't use that. So the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness is coming from the original word that is used in the Pali Canon, which is dukkha. This word dukkha is translated to discontentedness, where the mind is experiencing discontentedness. And the Buddha is describing this as conditioned feelings of pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. This is what the unenlightened mind experiences. It will experience happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. These are very pleasant for the mind to experience. But then there's these painful feelings that the unenlightened mind experiences. The sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are all very painful for the mind to experience. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that into the painful category. But shyness is a good example where it's not painful and it's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if you were on public transportation and somebody that you didn't know came and sat next to you and your body was touching their body, you might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant. Maybe you're just uncomfortable or unsatisfied. Maybe you're dissatisfied there, right? So this is neither painful nor pleasant. So here the Buddha is describing the unenlightened mind and what it experiences. Is it experiences these conditional feelings, meaning that the mind forms a feeling based on some condition. That if the mind sees that it's sunny outside, for example, it might get happy or excited based on the condition of the sun. But then when it rains or some other weather, you might be frustrated or agitated or annoyed, because you based your feeling of happiness on some condition, and that condition is not permanent. When that condition changes, your happiness changes too. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because the mind keeps basing its inner feelings on some condition. So maybe you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside, you get so excited that it's sunny outside. And maybe you're planning to go outside and go hiking or do some other activity outside. Maybe you go take a shower and you come back and you see it's raining and you feel sad and frustrated. An enlightened being doesn't experience this. What I just described is what the unenlightened mind experiences, which is conditional feelings. Because the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition, as soon as you get that pleasant feeling, when that condition changes, the mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. But the enlightened mind, this individual has already trained their mind to not form their inner feelings based on some condition. So that individual wakes up, they're already happy before they even look outside. And when they see it's sunny outside, okay, great, it's sunny outside, but they're not basing their inner feelings on the sun. So then when they go take a shower and they come out and they see that it's raining, they're not upset or frustrated. They can maintain their joy. Instead of going outside, maybe they'll stay home and read a book, or maybe they'll go to the mall, or maybe they'll invite their friends over for some dinner or something like that. The mind can maintain its joy and its happiness. So this is what the enlightened mind is experiencing. It's beyond these conditional feelings. It's experiencing unconditioned mental qualities. But the unenlightened mind is going to go up and down and up and down and up and down. It's only a matter of time before the mind experiences those feelings. And I'm going to explain to you what's causing them when we get to the Four Noble Truths. But here, you can independently verify this as well, because you know that your mind is unenlightened. So you can ask yourself, is this what you experience? Do you experience conditioned feelings? Do you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant? Is the Buddha accurately describing what you experience in the unenlightened state? Is there any feeling that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories? And if so, we can talk about it at the question period. If you think that there's a feeling there, we can discuss it. But you can independently verify that, yes, this is indeed what you experience. So some people refer to this as suffering. And for me, the word suffering explains the painful feelings very well, but it doesn't explain the pleasant feelings or the neither painful nor pleasant. When you're happy because you got a promotion at work, or you're excited because your mom's going to come visit you, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering. Or if that person you don't know came and sat next to you and your body was touching their body, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. The mind is just experiencing dissatisfaction, right? So this word suffering doesn't accurately describe the full spectrum of feelings and emotions that the Buddha is describing here. It only describes the painful feelings, which is 33% of this important teaching. If one only understood 33% of a teacher's teachings and they were missing 66% of them, how could you ever get to the goal of enlightenment if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings? So I don't use the word suffering, and I suggest that you don't either. The mind is discontent, discontented, or experiencing discontentedness. The mind is shaken up, whether it's experiencing conditional pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. That's what the Buddha is describing here. Then we have the universal truth of non-self. This isn't necessarily a building block to understand the Four Noble Truths, but I'm going to teach it to you here anyway because it's a good introduction for you. And then when we get to chapter 16 of the book, we're going to go into this in a lot more detail. But here, let me just introduce it to you so you can understand what this is. The universal truth of non-self is a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. There's these 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered. They're referred to as fetters. And the reason why is that during his lifetime, if you were a criminal and they were trying to keep you trapped or confined in a certain area, they would attach a fetter to your ankle. This is a shackle and a chain and a ball. And this would keep you confined to like a field. That would keep you out on a field, where today we put prisoners in jail cells and prison cells and things like this. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would attach a fetter to your ankle. Well, he describes these 10 fetters as pollutions or taints or defilements. And he describes them as a fetter because as long as these are in the mind, it's keeping you trapped in the unenlightened state. You keep experiencing the anger and the sadness and the frustration over and over and over again because the mind is fettered. It's trapped and it's confined based on these 10 individual pollutions? Well, the very first pollution in the mind is called personal existence view. This is one that the universal truth of non-self is solving. So the personal existence view, what this is where the mind has the misunderstanding or the confusion, the lack of wisdom, the misunderstanding and misperception that this body or this mind is you. This is the mind thinking that the self-image is who you are or the self-identity. And the mind is clinging to this. It's holding on to it. So an example for the self-image, the mind is clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. So if you were ever at a social situation and you spilled something on your clothing and you felt embarrassment, this is from the pollution of personal existence view, that the mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And when it's being perceived that way, then the mind is just fine, it experiences pleasant feelings. But when you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, when this body is not being perceived by others in the way you want to be perceived, that's where the embarrassment or the frustration or agitation comes in. From spilling something on your clothes, the mind can get embarrassed. Or if you've ever seen a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple or a gray hair, or you're losing your hair, you're getting a little extra fat here or there. In these situations, you might have experienced painful feelings like annoyance or agitation or frustration or some kind of stress or anxiety or something like this. Or perhaps you were like me when I was a child, when I was a teenager, I would stand in front of the mirror before going to school with the gel and the mousse and trying to get every little hair in exactly the right spot. And I couldn't go outside until I got every hair in the right spot. And because of this, I sometimes missed the school bus, right? This is the mind wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. If you've ever changed clothes constantly or put on certain iterations of jewelry and clothing, looking in the mirror and not feeling comfortable to go outside until you look exactly the way you want to look, this is the mind's personal existence view. It's clinging to this self-image. And now if somebody says something positive about this self-image, like, oh, you're so handsome, that shirt brings out the color of your eyes, or oh, you're so beautiful, your hair looks so amazing. If somebody says something like this, you'll get these pleasant feelings based on the condition that you're hearing this agreeable speech and this compliment. But then, because of impermanence, it's only a matter of time before somebody says something negative and degrading or disparaging about this physical body. So now the mind's going to experience the frustration and agitation and annoyance. This is what's happening when the mind has personal existence view and it's clinging to the self-image. Then there's the self-identity. The self-identity is something that the mind can cling to as well. You might be identifying with a certain culture, ethnicity, maybe a sexual orientation or a nationality, maybe a job or occupation. The mind can cling to any of this stuff, defining yourself through these things, thinking that this is who you are. So maybe you think of it as I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Lithuanian, or I am Brazilian, or any of this I am. Maybe I am a police officer, I am a lawyer, I am a doctor. As soon as you have any of this I am in the mind, now the mind is clinging to a certain identity and thinking that this is who you are. And now let's just say you cling to a job or occupation. Say that the mind is experiencing being a police officer. And now for 10 or 15 years, you're a police officer. And you identify with, I am a police officer. But then as time goes on, maybe you lose your job, maybe you get injured and you can't do that job anymore. And now you struggle. Maybe you retire and maybe you struggle during this time frame because you feel like a part of you is missing. You don't feel whole anymore because you're over here doing this electrical work as an electrician. And now the mind thinks, I am a police officer, and it's not comfortable. It's not content during this period of time. Or say you've ever been a boyfriend or girlfriend or a husband or a wife and you've come together in that relationship. Well, when you were together in that relationship, maybe you felt whole because you identified with I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend or I am a husband, I am a wife. But then when you guys separated and you broke up, you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because the mind didn't feel whole. And it felt like the way to solve this problem is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. But that's not going to solve the problem because the cause of this problem is the personal existence view. This pollution where the mind is clinging to an identity, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And now some people go off into the world thinking they don't even know who they are anymore. I need to go find my true self. Sometimes people come here to Thailand looking for themselves. They think that they've lost themselves. They don't even know who they are. They're trying to find their true self. But what the Buddha teaches you as the universal truth of non-self is that there is no self, that this body nor this mind is you. And what this does is this liberates you from clinging and holding on to an image and an identity, thinking that this is who you are. And now your mind can easily be shaken up by this. So if you let go of this and you train your mind to understand that this body isn't you and this mind isn't you, then you can get to the point where if someone compliments you, you might say, thank you, I appreciate your kind words or something like that, but they're not talking about me because there's no me here. Or then if somebody says something negative and degrading about this body or this identity, your mind can just be unaffected by it, where you don't experience any discontent feelings. But as long as you're clinging to the body or to the mind, the self-image or self-identity, you'll be shaken up during these situations, and the mind can't reside peaceful and joyful. So ultimately, you would like to train your mind to do what's called realize non-self, is to realize that there is no self, that this body isn't you, this mind isn't you. No need to cling to any of this stuff. And as soon as you allow your mind to cling to it, it's only a matter of time before all that stuff changes. And then you're going to feel like less of a person, or you're going to feel embarrassed or frustrated or agitated or some other discontent feeling. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys have. By the way, there's a way to independently verify the universal truth of non-self. So I'll share that with you while maybe you're thinking about your questions. The way that you independently verify this is you think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and then now. Think about your character and your personality and who you think you were as a person. Well, if that has been exactly the same all the way through, you can see that there's a permanent self. But if you think about this from when you were a child, teenager, early adulthood till now, your character, your personality has been constantly changing. So you can see there is no self. Or ask yourself, if your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? And usually when I ask people that question, they say no, they're not less of a person. So here you can see that intellectually, the mind understands that this body isn't you. But there's this confusion, this lack of understanding, this misunderstanding, this misperception in the mind that when somebody says something about this body, you will either get pleasant feelings or painful feelings. But intellectually, you know that this body isn't you, because if I ask you if you amputate this arm, are you less of a person? And I've always had everybody say, no, I'm not less of a person, right? And then another way you can do it is I suggest to people to point to yourself. Where are you? And sometimes people point, and they point to the chest or they point to the head, right? And if you point to the chest, you need to see what you're pointing to. Is that you're pointing to a shirt, right? If you're wearing a shirt, you're pointing to a shirt. If I took off this shirt and I held it up and I pointed to it, is that who I am? Is this shirt, or that shirt that you're wearing, is that who you are? And most people say, no, that's not me. Okay, so we throw away the shirt. So then I say, where are you? And then someone might point again. And you need to see what you're pointing to, which is the skin. So if I took off my skin and I held it up and I pointed to it, is that who I am? Am I the skin? Are you the skin? That skin you've got, is that who you are? And most people say, no, that's not you. So you can throw that away. That's not you. So then I might say, where are you? And then someone points again. Well, you've got muscle tissue, you've got bones, organs, fluid, things like this that are all in there. But none of that is you. That's just bits and pieces and parts. There's nothing that you can identify that is you. So here you can independently verify the universal truth of non-self. But again, this is a teaching that goes much deeper than what I was sharing here. This is just an introduction to it. Sometimes people understand it when I first share it. Sometimes they don't. And if you don't understand this at this point, it's okay, because we're going to explore it in chapter 16 when we get to that. But this is at least an introduction for you. So I'm going to open up to see what questions you guys have. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, let's see. I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to one more building block, and then we'll talk about the Four Noble Truths. This is to help you understand what a craving, desire, attachment is. These expectations, wants, holding, grasping, clinging. This is the mental longing and strong eagerness, the mind chasing after the objects of its affection, the mind pulling towards something. The mind thinks that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it and chases it. The mind falsely believes that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction, so it craves and longs and yearns. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw like a brand new pair of shoes or some earrings or a purse or a mobile phone or video games or something like this, and your mind was like, oh, brand new pair of shoes. Yes, 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 yes. I got to have those. Oh, that's going to make everything so much better. The mind is longing, yearning in this situation. It's craving, it's longing, yearning. So be sure you understand what this is, because you're going to need to know this in order to understand the Four Noble Truths. If you don't understand what a craving, desire, attachment is, and you haven't been able to observe that within your own mind, where the mind's longing, yearning, and pulling, then let me know and I'll help you to understand that. But here I'll move into the Four Noble Truths so that you can understand this and have this real breakthrough where you can understand the problem in the mind, the cause of it, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And this can be very freeing and help you to be able to break through and be able to see what's actually causing these feelings so that you can actually eliminate them. Because oftentimes people think it's other people that are causing these feelings, and you're going to be able to see here in a way that you can independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. The first noble truth is explaining the problem, that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. So those conditional feelings where the mind is forming its inner feelings based on some condition, the pleasant feelings, painful and neither painful nor pleasant, that's the problem. The mind's going up and down and up and down and up and down. And of course you experience calm and peace here and there, but it's only a matter of time before the mind gets shaken up about something. So everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. The mind's going to experience this up and down and up and down. It's only a matter of time before it experiences those. So that's the actual problem that the unenlightened mind is experiencing, the conditional feelings. The second noble truth is explaining the cause of this problem. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So I'm going to say this a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples to help you understand this. The discontentedness, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant, these conditioned feelings, they're caused by the craving, desire, attachments, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. Because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent, right? So the mind is longing, yearning, wanting things to be permanent. So I'll explain this to you with some examples. So if you've ever been in a relationship, a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, when you guys first got together, you probably experienced all kinds of pleasant feelings based on the condition that you have a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife. Maybe you were longing, yearning for affection or being with somebody, right? So the mind experiences all these pleasant feelings. You're going out to the movies, you're going to dinner, someone's calling you and checking in on you. Maybe you're having some great conversations. Maybe you're walking in the park. Maybe you're having intimate contact. You're having all these experiences that are just so pleasurable. But then over time, your mind starts craving and their mind starts craving. You start having all these expectations of each other, and you can't fulfill that person's expectations permanently, and they can't fulfill your expectations permanently. So now you guys become discontent and you end up ending the relationship, and the relationship's over. And during this period of time, you might really have a lot of anger or frustration. You might be disappointed. You might feel guilty or shameful. You might feel lonely or bored. You might feel like you miss this person, right? This is the mind holding on. This is the craving, desire, attachment. The mind wants everything to be permanent, when in reality, it's all impermanent. This relationship was impermanent from the very beginning. But the mind didn't understand that. It didn't have that wisdom to understand it. The mind wanted this relationship to be permanent. It's not the love that's causing the mind to experience the sadness or the stress or anxiety. It's the craving, it's the desire. It's wanting this relationship to be permanent. Here's another example with a relationship. Say you have grandma or grandpa or mom or dads or brothers or sisters or friends that die. If you grieve at this time, you're not a bad person, you haven't done anything wrong. It's just that the mind is craving permanence. The mind wants grandma and grandpa to be permanent. As long as they're alive and the mind's getting what it wants, it experiences happiness. But when the mind doesn't get what it wants, it experiences the painful feelings of grief, sorrow, or pain, or displeasure, or some other discontent feeling. That the mind is experiencing this up and down because it's not getting what it wants, which is grandma and grandpa to be alive. But because they were born, they had to die. The same thing happens at weddings. If you've ever been to a wedding and you've been crying or grieving, or the people around you have, this is a situation where maybe brother or sister or somebody else is going off into the world with somebody else. So mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or other people might be crying because the mind thinks that this person is permanent in my life. And now going off into the world with another person, this represents impermanence. And the mind doesn't understand impermanence in the unenlightened state. Or if you can think back to a time where you got dropped off at a university, or maybe you were dropped off at kindergarten, if you can remember back to that far, or preschool, this is where kids will cry and cry and cry. They'll be very discontent. And maybe the parents too, because the mind's holding on and wanting this to be permanent, when in reality, mom and dad are impermanent. Here's another example that doesn't deal with relationships that might help you to even see this further, is that imagine a brand new car, this perfect car that you've always been wanting to buy. You saved up all this money for it. You go to the store, you buy it, you drive it off the parking lot, you're driving down the road. Everybody's seeing you like, wow, look at her, she's so successful. Wow, look at him, he's so successful. Look at that brand new car. And you're feeling so prideful, and you're driving to the store, you park your car, you go inside, and then when you come out, there's a scratch on your car. In this situation, you could easily get frustrated if the mind has craving, desire, attachment. It's not the scratch that's causing the frustration or the anger or any other emotion. And it's not the person who scratched the car. What's causing these emotions and these feelings is the mind is craving for this car to be permanently beautiful. Right? The mind is craving permanence, but yet it lives in an impermanent world. It would be wonderful if nobody ever scratched our car, but that's not the world that we live in. It's only a matter of time if somebody's pushing a shopping cart through the parking lot that the wind kicks up and it blows the shopping cart into your car, and now it's scratched. Right? So when we walk through parking lots, we aspire not to scratch any cars. That's what we choose to do. But it's going to happen. This paint on the car is going to fade. The upholstery is going to fade or get ripped or torn. The tires are going to need to be changed. This car is impermanent. But if we crave and long and yearn for it to be permanent, when we start experiencing change, then the mind's going to be discontent. It's going to be angry or sad or frustrated. So basically, the mind in the unenlightened state, if it gets what it wants, it gets happy or excited. It gets those pleasant feelings. But if the mind isn't getting what it wants, it gets those painful feelings like anger, sadness, and frustration. The mind itself is causing these feelings. Oftentimes, we blame other people. We think it's other people that's causing these feelings. This is why you might have pushed people away out of your life. Maybe a friend or a coworker, maybe a significant other, somebody like this, a life partner. Maybe you think it's them that's causing these feelings. And with a lack of wisdom, when you're experiencing those painful feelings, the mind will tend to push this person away or push this situation away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. This is called aversion. Well, you can see that it didn't solve the problem, because the problem is the discontentedness, and you still get discontent. Even when you push that person out of your life, it didn't solve the problem. Because if that solved the problem, you wouldn't actually get angry or sad or frustrated anymore, because that's the cause, and you push them out of your life, and now you're not going to experience those feelings anymore. But you still experience those feelings because that's not the true cause of the problem. Or what you might be doing is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is almost like an animal growling and roaring at another being. The mind is trying to convince this person through fear to do things your way. That the mind thinks if I'm bitter and harsh and hostile to them, then they'll do things my way, right? This is the hostility and the bitterness that's coming out through your intention, speech, and actions. Or you might be putting your expectations on people, trying to control people, getting them to fulfill your cravings. Your mind might be thinking that if I can just get them to do things my way, everything will be perfect. So in this situation, you can't live harmoniously with all beings. That you're pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, and they might choose to leave out of your life. Or you might be putting your expectations on people. People feel pressured, and then they choose to leave out of your life. So this is what the unenlightened mind does with its lack of wisdom of these natural laws, is that it continues to experience these problems over and over and over and over again. But the cause of this is inside your own mind. It's the longing, yearning. If you get what you want, like mom calls you up and says, hey, I'm coming to visit you. I heard you got a new house. I want to see your new house. You get so excited on Tuesday. Yay, mom's coming on Friday. Let's tell everybody mom's coming. This will be so great and so wonderful. But now on Friday, she calls you and says, hey, I'm so sorry I can't come. Something's come up. I'm not able to come. And now you might get frustrated or angry or irritated. But all that is impermanence. Mom hasn't done anything wrong, so to speak. She just said, I can't come. But if the mind is craving and longing, yearning for mom to come, you can only be happy if she comes. And if she doesn't come, you get angry or frustrated. And you might attribute these feelings to mom when in reality they're being caused by your own mind. So here I would like to invite you to investigate this further through your reflection. That now that we've done some learning and examination of this, that now start reflecting on this to try to independently verify it. Because remember, you're not interested in believing any of these teachings. So think about a recent time when you've been angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling, even happiness and excitement and elation. You can see with all these. It might have been this morning, it might have been yesterday or last week where you were annoyed or you were agitated or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. Look at that situation now with these fresh eyes, where at that time you might have been trying to look for someone else to blame. That's what the unenlightened mind tends to do, is it tends to look for someone else to blame. But instead, look at the situation. What was it that the mind wanted? And if it got what it wanted, it got happy and excited. But because it didn't get what it wanted, it got angry or sad or annoyed or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. You can independently verify this for yourself and see the truth. And if you can't, let me know. Because I've had students say that before. They've raised their hand in class and they've said, David, I went to work the other day. My house looked perfect. It looked wonderful. I went to work and I came home and my house looked completely different. My wife had this craft project all over the house. And I got frustrated and I got angry. How did I cause this? Wasn't my wife the one who caused this? I wasn't even there at the house. How could I have caused these discontent feelings? Well, in this situation, this person was craving that permanence. They wanted their house to look a certain way permanently, and it's just not possible. This craft project that wife has all over the house, that is just impermanence. That's all it is. Because when you went to work, the mind was expecting it to look a certain way when you came back. There was this longing, yearning, and that's not permanent. So now that the person came back and they saw the house look different, that's where the mind experienced the discontentedness. But just like the house can't look that way permanently, this craft project is not permanent either. Eventually, wife will put this away, right? So you can independently verify that this second noble truth is the truth through your own direct experience. And then what I suggest you do in order to practice this is that now and forever, whenever there's any discontentedness in your mind, instead of looking for someone else to blame, is look inward and try to figure out what is it within your own mind that's causing these feelings. There's some craving, some longing, yearning. And where you can't see that, you can reach out to me and I will help you. But as long as these cravings, desires, attachments are in the mind's going to keep experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again. But there is a solution. And that's what the third noble truth is starting to indicate for you. The third noble truth is explaining to you the elimination of discontentedness is possible. by eliminating cravings, desires, attachments. That when you eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments, that's going to eliminate your discontentedness. And you can independently verify this too. If you think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend when you guys first broke up, you were angry perhaps, or you were lonely or bored, or you were missing this person. But eventually your mind let go. You said, you know what, if he wants to be with someone else or she wants to be with someone else, so be it. In your mind, let them go. Or if they would like to move to another place in the world, so be it. In your mind, let them go. And when your mind let go, that's where you regained your peace and your joy. So what's going to help you eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments is the fourth noble truth. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in eliminating your discontentedness. The Buddha teaches you how to eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments through each one of these steps. That when you're learning with the original words of the Buddha and you're dialing this into your life closer and closer, you'll be able to see that your mind's becoming more peaceful and more joyful because you're eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments. One of the ways you might think about this Eightfold Path is it's like 8 individual steps or 8 individual dials. If you had a speaker system and you were trying to dial in the sound and get a better and better quality sound, that's what you're doing with the Eightfold Path is you're dialing this in closer and closer so that you can get a better quality performing mind. And it starts with right view. You need to have right view of what's actually causing these feelings, because how could you ever eliminate them if you didn't know what was causing them? So right view is to understand the problem is discontentedness, the cause is craving, desire, attachment, the elimination is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and the path forward is the Eightfold Path. That's the complete perfect plan to helping you eliminate your discontentedness. So right view is to maintain responsibility for your own feelings, understanding that it's not other people that's causing these. But what wrong view is where the mind looks to blame other people. When you start looking around the world to blame other people for the things that you're experiencing, this is wrong view. And you'll never get to enlightenment this way. Because if it's everybody else that's causing your feelings, then that means you have to train 8 billion people to do things your way. Because it's only when people do things your way that the mind can be happy. Right? So that's a massive training program that you're going to have to train the entire world to do things your way, right? And that's just not feasible. Or you could train one mind. That's the other option, is you could train one mind. And I think you know whose mind that is that you need to train. It's your own mind. And this is why the Buddha was able to get to enlightenment. He didn't have to go around the world and train other people to do things his way. He just trained his own mind. And that's how he was able to get to the peace and the joy. And you can essentially do the same thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause here, see if you guys have any questions on the Four Noble Truths before we move into right intention and helping you guys understand that. If you have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. I see Marcy has her hand up. If you'd like to ask questions, go ahead, Marcy.
Thank you, Teacher David. Would you please provide an example how pleasant feelings arise from craving, desire, attachment, and I guess that would be my question. Like how, like when you're, experiencing a pleasant feeling, where is that craving, desire, attachment?
Sure.
How did it come from?
Sure. So say I'll give you a couple examples. Say I have this longing, yearning to be successful. And a sign of success for me is that I drive a BMW or a Mercedes. And now I'm longing, yearning. I'm chasing after this money because I want this money. And when I get the money, I get so happy. And now I've got the money, I can buy the car. And now I'm so happy because I got the car. But now, well, wham, the car gets in an accident. Now I'm frustrated. I'm so angry that somebody wrecked my car or that someone crashed into my car or that I crashed it myself. Because the mind was experiencing this longing, yearning for money and for wealth and to be perceived by others in a certain way, now the mind experiences the happiness when it's getting what it wants. But then when it's not getting what it wants, now it experiences the anger, the sadness, or the frustration. Or another example, the one I just used, Say somebody really craves the affection of their mom and they really want their mom to be involved in their life. They're longing, yearning for this, right? It's not just that, hey, I would enjoy having my mom in my life. It's I'm longing, yearning for this. I really want it so badly. So now when mom calls and says, hey, I'm going to come visit you. I heard you got this new house and I would like to come visit you and say hello and, spend some time getting your house set up. Well, then the mind gets so excited on Tuesday when you get that phone call or that message because mom's coming. Yay, so excited. But now when mom maybe has a problem with her car and she can't come, or maybe her flight gets canceled, she can't fly to where you're at, now you get sad and frustrated and angry. So those cravings, desires, attachments, the longing, the yearning, the mind wanting things to be a certain way, if it gets what it wants, it gets the pleasant feelings. And these are just a couple of those examples, but you can think about it in your own life too. Here's another one. When we were children, we really wanted chocolate and ice cream. At least a lot of us did, right? Really wanted that chocolate or ice cream or that lollipop. And boy, when we got it, it was the best day ever. And if we got ice cream 2 or 3 times in a day, oh my goodness, the day couldn't have been any better, right? That was so happy, right? That's where the craving is. We have this longing, yearning for this sweet taste on the tongue, right? But now, a couple of days later, we ask mom and dad for ice cream and chocolate, and they say, no, you can't have it. And now we're frustrated, or now we're angry, or now we're irritated, right? This is the craving, desire, attachment that's producing it.
Teacher David, may I share an experience with you where I experienced some excitement, and maybe I'm just having difficulty delineating whether or not there was a craving to it or not?
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
So the other day, my plans changed and I ended up with some available time in the evening. So I reached out to my son and I said, hey, what are you doing tonight? Mom would like to come over and cook you a vegan meal and have dinner together. And he said, we don't have anything going on. We'll be home. I said, okay, I'm going to go shopping. I'll be there at 4. I went to the house. And when I got into the house, just being in the house and starting to chop up stuff and create, I was feeling enjoyment, a lot of enjoyment. I cooked him the meal. We sat down, we had wonderful conversation. But the whole time I'm aware of the mind having this real high level of enjoyment. It was really wonderful. Then the evening came to an end. I said, have a lovely evening, gave hugs and kisses, and I got in the car. And on my ride home from the car, I felt a sense of kind of like, that was really, 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 really pleasurable. I really enjoyed that a great deal, but kind of now it's over.
Yeah, so there's a craving in there. You experience the other side of it, like the ickiness, the uncomfortableness, because now it was over. So the whole time that you're enjoying that experience, you need to just remind yourself occasionally that this is impermanent. Don't form inner feelings on this impermanent situation. That you need to learn how to go enjoy something like that and enjoy it while you're doing it and have fun. And then when it's over and move on to the next thing. Your mind was still holding on to it to some degree, either to spend time with your friends or that you're being a great mother or you're providing something. You have to look inward. I can't tell you exactly what your craving is in this situation, but you're going to have to look inward and see, what is it? Are you wanting to be a great mother? Are you wanting to have time with your son? Are you wanting your son to eat vegan? What is it? Are you holding on to the conversation? Or there's some things in there. There might be more than one that your mind's clinging to. Otherwise, you wouldn't experience that little ickiness. Even a little slight ickiness, the enlightened mind won't experience. So the way that you get ahead of this is, of course, continuing to train your mind through the entire Eightfold Path. But then also when you're starting to enjoy things like that, you need to see if the mind's clinging and craving and then pull it back so you can learn how to enjoy it without clinging to it. So that then once it's over, you just move on to the next thing.
Could the mind, as I'm seeing this, I'm thinking maybe my mind was wanting to hold on to that experience.
Sounds
Could it
like
be
it.
something of wanting the whole experience of it because it was just the whole experience was so pleasurable?
Yeah, you have to look inward. You can cling to the overall experience, and now you're clinging to that, and the mind doesn't want to let go. So, what you would like to do, in addition to the entire Eightfold Path, since you've studied a little bit, is you would like to go do this multiple times. Go see your son, spend time, and go away. Go spend time and go away, and train your mind to let go each time. Because if now you don't do it again for 3 months or 6 months, then the mind doesn't have an opportunity to practice right away. So you would like to go visit him regularly. You might be clinging to him, if you haven't done the death contemplation or things like that. But I'm not interested to get into too much detail here, Marcy, because I'm introducing students to the Four Noble Truths. But we can talk after class if you'd like to discuss more.
I appreciate that, Teacher David. Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to stick around. Okay, so it looks like Kristen has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, thank you, David. My question is about, physical things and permanence of physical things. And one example that I have is I have a vanity in my bathroom, and I stained it permanently. And I was like, as soon as it happened, I immediately had the feeling of frustration and disappointment in myself that I wasn't more careful, that I stained this cabinet. And I thought about different ways to fix it, and it took a few minutes, but I was like, okay, this is impermanence. This is like sort of the things that you talked about. Nothing can be perfect and the same always. And I feel like I've let go of it, but I sometimes walk by it and I notice it and it triggers it again. I'm like, oh, and then I have to remind myself it's just impermanence. It can't be perfect. It's okay. It's not perfect. So my question is, do I just keep constantly reminding myself every time I look at this thing? And then maybe over time, I won't even notice it. So that's one question. And then I have another one.
Yes. So you actually spilled something on it that stained it. It wasn't like a wood stain that you intentionally stained it. It was non-intentional, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So this stain, the mind sounds like it's craving and clinging to this vanity, and it wants it to be permanent. And now this stain represents impermanence. So where you see that, yes, and it's triggering that craving, and each time you just remind yourself that it's impermanent, and you cut it off and let it go, and cut it off and let it go, and you cut it off and let it go. And this is what the mind needs to be able to do in order to let that vanity go, so that it no longer craves for it to be permanent. And of course, you need the whole entire Eightfold Path to be able to train the mind to be able to do that, with the meditation and all the other things that I'm going to be teaching you.
Okay. So I guess over time, I will be able to feasibly, it won't even bother me. It'll just be, a thing. Okay. So then my next question, I'm sorry, I'm out of view. My next question is...
Let me share this with you, Kristen, before you move on, is that even though we say cut it off and let it go, it's not that straightforward with a lot of these attachments. It's really cut it off and 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 cut it off. You might be cutting this off for several weeks or months before the mind finally lets it go. This must be a vanity that you were particularly fond of, and that's why the mind's holding on to it. Whereas if it was something else that your mind wasn't holding on to, it would be no big deal. But for this particular vanity, you must have probably put a lot of thought and time into purchasing it and setting it up, or whatever it is that you've done. And that's why the mind's holding on to it so much. So you're going to need to constantly keep cutting it off and cutting it off before the mind will eventually let it go. And that's why you would like to do all the steps on the Eightfold Path, which we haven't gotten to the right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, the mental discipline. But I think you might have studied that with me before. So that's why you need to be doing those consistently and proactively, so that in these situations, the mind will be more easily able to cut off and let go. But, if you, let's just say, example, you really wanted a chocolate bar and you went into 7-Eleven and they didn't have your chocolate bar. It's you're a little bit annoyed. You let it go. No big deal. I'll get a chocolate bar another day. But something like this vanity, or maybe if something happened to your husband or somebody like this, you're not going to be able to cut it off and let it go very easily. the mind's going to really need to work at it to be able to cut these things off and ultimately let them go. It's going to take many weeks and months for the mind to eventually let go of some of the most stubborn cravings. In fact, that's language that the Buddha uses when he talks about these cravings. He sometimes refers to them as stubborn cravings, and that really helps you to understand how deeply rooted they really are in the mind, and it takes a lot of cutting off and a lot of training to let go some of them. It's kind of like an onion, that the outer layers peel off really easily, but then when you work closer and closer into the core of the onion, it's harder and harder to peel those back.
Okay, I understand. And then my other question was about the personal existence view, which I know I've spoken to you about, and I still struggle with that one. And I know we'll hope to become more clear, but how would you describe if someone said, who are you? Like, how would you sort of respond to that?
Well, in most situations, it's a student or somebody who understands I'm teaching the teachings of the Buddha. So I end up teaching them if it's a student, right? If they say, who are you? I will say, oh, well, there is no self, there's nobody here, so I'll explain the whole thing. But let's just say I'm out and about, someone's not a student whatsoever, and I'm not going to be teaching them. And they say, who are you? I guess I would ask them a question like, do you mean what is my name? And they might say, yeah, what is your name? And I'll say, oh, my name's David, right? But my mind knows that I am not David. The mind's been trained to understand that there's many Davids in the world, millions of Davids. I'm not the only David. So it's a matter of saying it while the mind understands that this body is not you, right? So in certain situations, it's just easy to say, I am hungry or I am thirsty. But the mind can get to a point where it understands that I am not thirsty. It's that the body needs water. Or if someone might say, I have a headache. Well, it's not that I have a headache because there's no I here. Instead, what's really happening is the head hurts. That's true reality. There's no I here to be able to have a headache. In fact, it's just the head hurts. That's all that's really happening. But what the mind does with its personal existence view is it inserts this I, because we've been taught and conditioned for so many years that I am somebody. I have to go out into this world and be a somebody. We were all given labels at birth. My label is David. So we take on this personal existence view and it gets deeply rooted in the mind, and now it becomes very hard to untangle it. So there's a matter of training your mind to understand the universal truth of non-self and deeply soak that in. And then you might practice that way 90, 95, 98% of the time. But then there's certain situations where it's just easier to use the language that people are expecting to hear. But the mind can understand that none of this is you. It's not who you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is one of the most challenging things for an individual to understand when they first get started, is this universal truth of non-self. This is something that many students are challenged with. I've even had students ask questions about this for over a year before they really actually understand it. But by the time we get to chapter 16 and you hear me explain this a few times and you think about it and you read about it, you'll start to maybe understand it a bit more. Okay, so it looks like Steve has a question. I guess he can't raise his hand electronically. Do you have something to ask, Steve?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I had a comment and then I had a question, I guess, relating to the comment, and this is, about attachment. One of the things that's been very helpful to me is that, one of the things I've learned through meditation is the process of letting go. And one thing that's happened to me, that's always happened to me during the course of my life, is when I have a lot on my mind, I'll wake up early in the morning with just thoughts racing about, I've got to do this, I got to do that, what happened with this, And one of the things that meditation has been really helpful for me is that I can concentrate on my breath when I wake up in the early hours of the morning, and allows me to let go of these racing thoughts, and I can actually go back to sleep and have a very peaceful sleep, where until I began meditating, I couldn't do that. And that's one of the most practical things that I've learned, is that this has really helped me with these racing thoughts and to get some control over my mind. So that's the comment. The question is this a form of meditation?
So I wouldn't consider it one of the meditations that I teach, like 2 to 3 meditations for 30 minutes or more. I think of it like a little touch-up meditation. It's like 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, 5 minutes there. You can do these little things every once in a while. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you're sitting there for 2 minutes at the traffic light. You can do some focusing on the breath to cut off those discontent feelings. But I wouldn't consider it one of your 2 to 3 meditations, but you are using the qualities that you've built in meditation to help you at other parts of your life.
I appreciate that. It's been kind of a miracle for me. It's been really the only thing that I've found that can address this attachment, I guess I would call it, with these thoughts.
Yeah, the teachings of the Buddha truly work. That's the beauty in all of this. The more you learn them, the more you practice them, you can see that they actually work. And it's like really dumbfounding sometimes because, in the world, we see a lot of misinformation. We see a lot of people marketing things, and then, it doesn't really pan out the way that the marketing had described. And, you might not appreciate that, but here's something that you can hear from your teacher, like these things actually work. And then when you learn them and practice them and you see they work for yourself, it's like, my goodness, because we've all been growing up as children, maybe in some kind of tradition, whether it was Christianity or some other teachings, and everything's delayed. It's kind of like believe these things until you die, and that's when you find out whether something was real or not. But here you are in this life being able to learn, reflect, and practice and see the results, and this can be really dumbfounding and very impactful to the mind.
Works as advertised.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not lying, right? Even when I tell a joke, I don't lie.
Never doubted you, teacher. Never. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I saw Ted move closer to the camera. That sometimes signifies that Ted has a question. Do you have a question, Ted? No? Okay. All right. So I don't see any more questions. So let's go on to the second step. This is not going to take me the same amount of time to explain it to you. It's quite short in nature. The right view takes a lot of time, so you really need to take a lot of time with that. But this one is called right intention. Some people refer to this as right thinking or right thought, but I translate it as right intention. So here's the words of the Buddha. He says, "In what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This is called right intention." So here he's talking about 3 things: renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. What renunciation is where the mind has an interest and willingness to let go and give up its unwholesomeness. There's certain unwholesome things that we're doing in the unenlightened state that we need to be willing to let go of. If we just hold on to these and we don't have the intention or the thinking of the thought of renunciation, then we're not willing to let go. So you need to be willing to let go of the unwholesomeness. And you need to be willing to let go and give up your false beliefs and your false perceptions of reality, right? So you're not getting rid of your false beliefs and bringing in new beliefs. That's not what you're doing. You're getting rid of your false beliefs and bringing in wisdom. So when you bring in wisdom and you see that something that you've learned and you've independently verified conflicts with your beliefs, then you get rid of your beliefs. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have any beliefs. You just know the truth of true reality. And that's because you've replaced all of that with wisdom. One of the very first false beliefs that you need to eliminate is the belief that other people are causing you to be discontent. This is one of the first ones that you need to eliminate. And that's what that wisdom of the Four Noble Truths is going to help you to do. That if you independently verified what I just shared with you, you can see that all these years we've been believing that someone else is causing us to be angry or irritated or annoyed. You might have been in arguments where you were adamantly arguing with someone, trying to convince them that they had to stop doing what they were doing because they were making you angry. Well, now, if you've independently verified the Four Noble Truths, you can see that that wasn't true. That's a false belief. And we didn't have that wisdom back then. So no need to feel guilty or shameful. Just understand that that's not true. Practice the intention of renunciation where you're willing to let this go. Essentially, what this is helping you to do is keep an open mind so that as you're learning wisdom, you can get rid of these things that are no longer serving you. So you need to be willing to have the intention of letting these things go. What ill will is animosity, bitterness, anger, hatred, and all those lesser versions, like frustration, irritation, annoyance, and so forth and so on. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. The only reason why you dislike certain people is because they're not meeting your expectations. Your cravings aren't getting fulfilled. Your longing, your yearning, your wants aren't getting fulfilled. So now you dislike this person. But when you get rid of your cravings, desires, attachments, you won't have that. And it starts with right view, but then you're going to need to have this intention of non-ill will. Non-ill will is a double negative. So what that means is goodwill. You need to have the intention of goodwill. Active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. This genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then coupling that with the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others, where you just don't have any feelings or thoughts or ideas of harming others. That as long as you have the intention of harmfulness, you're going to put out harm through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, and maybe your livelihood. And now when you put out harm, this harm is going to come back to you. So as long as you keep putting out harm through your intention, speech, and actions, it's just all going to come back to you. And you're going to have to deal with that unwholesomeness. So if you have the intention or the thinking or the thought of harmlessness, you're disinterested in causing harm to others, because you get to the point where you understand any harm that you put out is just going to come back to you. So these are the three intentions. Right intention is the intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, and the intention of harmlessness. And now we can summarize what we've talked about, and I'll open up to any questions that you guys have. Right view is the Four Noble Truths, essentially understanding those four individual truths. The first one is describing the problem that all unenlightened beings will experience discontentedness. The second noble truth is explaining the cause of that problem, craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, that's what's causing it. The third noble truth is explaining the elimination is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you can uproot the cravings, desires, attachments in the mind, then you will eliminate your discontentedness. And the fourth noble truth is explaining the path of how to actually do that, which is the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the complete perfect plan to uprooting craving out of the mind and getting to the point where the mind is completely peaceful and joyful. So the Four Noble Truths is right view. And one of the ways that you can think about this is accepting responsibility for your own feelings, your intentions, your speech, and your actions. As long as you are blaming others, you're looking in the wrong place. And this is why you haven't been able to solve this problem. That as long as you blame others, you're just looking in the wrong place and you're not applying the right techniques to actually uproot this and eliminate it out of the mind. But when you understand what the real problem is, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward, and you start applying the tools and techniques that the Buddha shares, you'll solve the problem. But if you didn't know what it was, you wouldn't be able to solve it. So that's why right view is so important. Wrong view would be to blame other people, but you would like to more and more establish right view is look inward and figure out what is the cravings, desires, attachments, the longing, the yearning, the wants and expectations that the mind has that is leading to this discontentedness. Then there's right intention. This is the practice of the right thinking or the right thought, the intention of renunciation, the willingness to let go and give up your false beliefs, your false opinions and views, your unwholesomeness, having the intention or the thinking or thought of non-ill will or loving kindness or active goodwill towards all beings, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, and the intention or the thinking or the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. So this is what I was going to share with you guys today to help you guys understand this wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. And then in the two subsequent classes, we're going to teach you the moral conduct, which is right speech, right action, right livelihood. And then the subsequent one after that is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And we're going to penetrate into this using the original words of the Buddha. And I do this each Sunday at 9 a.m. in Thai time and 9 p.m. as well. So you can attend either of these, or you can actually watch it on the recordings. And then on Wednesdays, I teach meditation, and then I open up to any and all questions questions that you guys have. And of course, we do meditations both of those days too. So these are the 2 time frames that you can attend, and you'll have to look at your local listings because it could be Saturday evening and Sunday morning for you. You just need to do the time zone change. So let me know if you guys have any questions here on anything that I've been sharing with you. I'll be pleased to answer your questions. You can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. I appreciate your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. I appreciate your questions and anything you're doing in order to prepare for the classes. Maybe you're reading the book before class or after class. Maybe you're starting to meditate a little bit. This is wonderful because it's helping you, it's helping all of those around you, and it's helping all of humanity. Because as you train your mind more and more, your mind's going to become more and more peaceful. It's helping you. And then the people around you, you're not going to be so bitter and harsh and hostile anymore. You're gradually improving that and not putting out any harm. So it's helping the people around you. It's the most loving and kind thing you could do for others, which is to train your own mind. And then it's helping all of humanity become a more peaceful and loving society. So thank you for your dedication to learning. I have a lot more to teach you over the next 7 months, essentially. And as you guys have questions, you can ask those in class. You can post them in our Facebook group. You can send me a private message through any of the messaging apps or email, or you can schedule personal guidance through our website where we can talk on Zoom one-on-one and I'll be able to help you, because it's one thing learning in class, but it's another thing applying it to your day-to-day life. So you might need that personal guidance from time to time. So feel free to use that. It's all available at no cost for you. So thank you again for joining, and perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Be well and have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee-ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.